These are images of the damage and lives taken by the Russian-backed Assad regime in its 11-month campaign on Idlib last year. This is when a ceasefire deal was signed to put an end to the humanitarian catastrophe. And this is the number of the United Arab Emirates offered to pay the Assad militants to break the ceasefire, resuming the carnage once again. What's shocking is that what we consider a Muslim country, that we expected to stand by the millions who have suffered at the hands of Bashar and his army, have completely done the opposite and forsaken them. So why did a country expected to be friend become foe?
Abu Dhabi's foreign policy has two principal goals: to protect itself against Iran and to combat political Islam in all its forms, with the Muslim Brotherhood as its main target.
Since the start of the Syrian revolution in 2011, countries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Qatar had heavily backed the Syrian opposition. The UAE, on the other hand, had been on the fence, with a less prominent role than that of their neighbors Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They mainly centered on ensuring that what they called Islamist forces did not dominate the uprising. The UAE's stance against the spread of political Islam gives it common ground with the regime in Damascus. The Muslim Brotherhood, a transnational organization, is seen as a component of the Syrian opposition with many influential figures based in Turkey. The Saudi-Iranian dispute may dominate headlines, but the Turkey-UAE rivalry, which is rooted in a battle for dominance of global Muslim religious soft power, geopolitical competition across the Muslim world, is equally wreaking havoc in the Middle East and North Africa. The regional changes that brought down 4 regimes in the Arab Spring in 2011 and led to elected governments in Tunisia, Libya and Egypt had alarm bells ringing for the Gulf countries and their monarchies. The Arab Spring provided Turkey with an opportunity to become the leading advocate of democracy across the Middle East, while like-minded Qatar, known to provide assistance to political Islamic groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, had also used its satellite channel Al Jazeera, whose aggressive coverage of the Arab Spring had helped propel insurgent emotions from one capital to the next. After a string of events, the Gulf crisis had taken place, where Qatar had come under blockade by its neighboring countries through land, sea and air. This had pushed Turkey and Qatar closer together. Fearing the domestic unrest within the Gulf monarchies and being toppled, and also fearing the Turkish democratic model and Qatar's influence through its media would bring, the UAE had prioritized countering Turkey and Qatar's influence over Iran.
The shift in UAE policy toward Assad's regime dates back to 2018. The UAE had reopened its embassy in Damascus, marking a diplomatic boost for President Bashar al Assad from a US-allied Arab state.
UAE Minister of State for Foreign Affairs Anwar Gargash had previously said that expelling Syria from the Arab League was a mistake. As part of a plot to tie Turkey down in a long military conflict in Idlib province and to stretch the Turkish army's resources in order to distract it from the campaign in Libya, where it is assisting the UN-backed government of national accord against UAE ally Khalifa Haftar. Sources have revealed to the London-based Middle East Eye that the UAE offered $3 billion to Assad to revive the offensive, where apparently $1 billion was to be paid before the end of March 2020, with $250 million reportedly being paid up front.
أن يسود الأمن والأمان والاستقرار ربوع الجمهورية العربية السورية تحت ظل القيادة الحكيمة لفخامة الرئيس الدكتور بشار الأسد.
According to a report by the French-language site Orient XXI, the UAE has been found to be training Syrian military intelligence officers and providing aid to the regime of President Bashar al Assad. In trying to conceal their support, the UAE had claimed that they had simply called to reassure Syria that the UAE is always prepared to support the country, particularly in the current coronavirus crisis. Where Bashar al-Assad was once isolated and world powers, Arab and non-Arab, had supported his ousting from power, the UAE appears to have now adopted a mediatory role.
Securing its monarchy while sweeping humanitarian crimes that have claimed the lives of more than 1 million under the carpet. This begs the question, where did humanitarian solidarity go when hundreds of thousands of Muslims were slaughtered through UAE assistance?